Hello and welcome to the Practice Marketing Podcast, highlighting successful strategies from North America's fastest growing clinics and experts so you can learn from their wins and power your practice growth. I'm your host, Neil Trickett, CEO of Practice Promotions, and today we're going to talk about building the next 100 years of PT with Dr. Kyle Covington, who is the president of the American Physical Therapy Association. And Dr. Covington is a Duke-trained clinician, educator, and policy advocate. Kyle has spent his career fighting for PTs at every level, whether that's in the clinic, the classroom, and also on Capitol Hill. And now as the APTA president, he's focused on one big mission, which is positioning physical therapy for the next 100 years. And today he's joining me to talk about what's going to take us there and how the APTA is working to support clinicians and practice owners to navigate today's challenges. So Kyle, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Neil. It's great to be here. I'm excited to have a conversation.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you so much. Super excited to have you on here. I have a quick question because I'm very curious. What is it like being the APTA president?
Yeah, it's a blessing. It's an amazing opportunity. When I really sort of step back, there's like 34 other people that have had this role in our profession's history. So I don't take for granted the special opportunity I have for the years that I do this. It's special, it's wild, and it's impactful on the best days for sure. I think sometimes what people maybe not understand the role of the president. So I'm elected by the House of Delegates on behalf of their sort of states or sections and academies. As part of that job, I oversee our national board of directors. I work really closely with APTA's chief executive officer, Justin Moore, who manages all of the staff. And so it's in that relationship that we sort of drive the strategy that the board set out with the sort of implementation that the staff helps us with. But then I'm also the spokesperson for the organization. So I spend a lot of time doing things like this and talking to folks and advocating publicly about what the profession does, but what APTA does. But then it's also sort of I sit, over the complexity of the organization, right? Like within APTA, we have all 50 state chapters, 51 with the District of Columbia. We have the 18 specialty academies of private practice, ortho, neuro, and peds, and that list goes on and on. We have some related organizations like the Physical Therapy Fund that does sort of philanthropy. We have the Research Foundation, and so all that sort of under the APTA umbrella. So on any given day, I'm learning a lot about different aspects of the organization, the profession, and also just really trying to make cohesive the work we do over all of that complexity, which is a challenge, but also fun too.
Yeah, and thank you for all your hard work on that. And to all the dedicated members of the APTA, you guys do a tremendous amount to help support the profession and advocate and move us forward there. For people that, in our audience that are not part of the APTA, how would you explain kind of broadly like what the APTA does?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously we're a member organization, right, at the individual member level. Probably the main things we do are advocate, educate, and also build a community amongst our members. So the advocacy part is huge. We're involved heavily at the national and state levels around advocacy for our practice, whether that's in Congress or state legislatures or also in regulatory environments like regulation departments, Department of Insurance, or all the insurance companies. How can we advocate for what PT and our patients need? On the education side, right, we're always doing, people think about Combined Sections meeting is our big conference, and it is. It's the largest conference for physical therapy in the world, but we're doing a ton of other education too. We have an online learning center. We have lots of meetings throughout the year. All of our states and academies have their own meetings and conferences, and even all the way down to even district level sort of education is something we're really trying to empower our members through that education. And then finally, sort of that networking, I think is needed now more than ever, right? We kind of went through COVID where we all got separated into our individual homes and places of business. And now we're really seeing people coming back and engaging in the organization because they want to find their people both physically and online to sort of build those networks that we know are really important to sort of sustain us as professionals. We got to find our people and and learn from and work with and laugh with the folks that are doing the same things we are, because it's hard out there. So we really are committed to bringing folks together to support each other as well.
Yeah, I love that. And I've certainly, when we have clients, and I've certainly been, when I've been to like the private practice section, the peer-to-peer groups, like I think those are fantastic, right, for business professionals. Um, and so there's lots of different groups I know within the APTA that support each other. And you're completely right that you need to have, you can't know everything, you can't be alone, and you can learn so much from other people, right? So being in
Yeah.
those groups is huge. And I would say for our audience out there, I mean, I was just at the combined section meeting last year, and I was super impressed. I hadn't been in a very, very long time, and I was just very impressed. It makes you realize like just how complex the physical therapy world is, right? And all the different parts and different lives that we touch, right? It was very impressive to me. So I think if you've never been to a conference or haven't been in a very long time, like CSM, like PPS, I think it's something you really should do because it just puts you in a different frame of mind for what you can do with your business moving forward, what you can do to help your patients moving forward, and especially, we're all part of this profession, and what we can do to move that forward. And you had talked about this before, but getting into sort of the future here of where we're going with the profession, you kind of talked about we're at this inflection point now. And so what do you kind of see, especially for outpatient physical therapy, what do you think that's going to look like, let's say 10 years from now, if we get it right?
Yeah, I think inflection points are scary and exciting, and I think we're really in one at the moment. Sometimes when you're in that, it's hard to see sort of why we're here and what's coming next. But, I mean, APTA as an organization hit a big inflection back in 2021 with sort of the centennial, right, 100 years of that organization. So we started to sort of frame what's the future look like. You alluded in the intro, what's the next 100 years? It's hard to see that. And then since that 2021, a lot has happened in the world. Yeah, that's continued to sort of shape our thoughts around that inflection, and also just what we're dealing with in practice and in clinics and in education where I spend my day job. But you know, uh, we've used it as an opportunity at APTA to sort of set our next strategic frameworks that we just launched earlier this year. Our sort of framework for 2030, and at the top of that is payment. And we'll probably talk more about that as the podcast goes on. But I love your question. Like, what's it look like in 10 years if we get it right now? And that's the question, and a scary one because we don't want to get it wrong, but we also know that right is hard to predict because the other thing I think feeding this inflection point is a very clear and growing demand for our services. So demand for PT is off the charts, literally, growing as fast as supply is low. Demand is high, which in any other economy would drive prices up, but in the U.S. healthcare system does not. So that's a challenge in this inflection. And also just sort of the rapid change in the way we practice, the types of patients that we're seeing in the models. Um, in my history as a physical therapist, I don't think we've ever seen such rapid development. Women's and pelvic health is one of the fastest growing areas. The way we're engaging with AI and the digitally enabled physical therapist, which is a term we're using at APTA, is changing so fast. Like you were at CSM, just going in the exhibit hall and you see who's there at a PT conference has changed just in like 2 or 3 years. The vendors that are coming in because they want to invest in us are more on the tech side of things now. So all that's contributing to that inflection. I think if we get it right, in 10 years, we'll see much better reimbursement for our services that's more value based versus time based. We will see physical therapists able to use the rapidly developing technology that augments their hands on and mental expertise. Doesn't take it away, but augments it. That it helps patients get to the right type of provider at the right time in a better way than what we see right now. And that we sort of are rapidly changing practice and keeping up with how the world is changing really fast. So in 10 years, I think we'll see us in a lot of spaces that we aren't right now or weren't 5 years ago. The sort of prehab prevention primary care space is also rapidly developing. So I think in 10 years, that's going to be maybe half of what we do versus a smaller portion of what we do. We've spent 100 years being the post-injury
Right.
rehab professionals. I think that's going to equalize over the next
Yeah.
decade.
Totally agree on that. And it's exciting times. I mean, many industries would kill to have what we have, right? Which is this huge demand and rising demand for our services. And, we work with many different clients, some of 100% insurance space. A lot are starting to move to a kind of a hybrid model and adding
Mhm.
cash line services into their baseline models and things like that. And also the technology. It's incredible to see just in the last 1 to 2 years, just the amount of AI documentation, trying to make life easier for the clinician within the practice, for the practice owner to give them more insights into the business, into how, obviously we're delivering the care, delivering the services, the impact on revenue, and all kinds of different things that they have to think about. I agree that I think we're getting the customer, right, the patient's going to start to expect more and more of this, augmented type service too. Some analysis, analytics, more objective. I think data is what people will come to expect. I remember when, back in practice 28 years ago, and MRIs were just getting more and more popular. Like everybody started to come in and say, "Hey, I want an MRI," right? Because that was their thing to see, right? They wanted the data, wanted to see what was going on. I think we're going to have continued ways in where that AI can help analyze and give objective body movements and show progress. And I think there's a lot of room for proving ourselves and proving our services to patients and clients as we come in.
Yeah, I
Um,
totally agree. I mean, I get way too geeky about the data my Garmin watch gives me when I exercise, right? And I think population just expects more information about how they're doing. And I also think the one I'd add to that I think will be different is I think the population is going to have a different expectation of when and how and for what they receive our services. Do I really need to get in my car and drive across town because I tweaked my back a little bit, or is there a way I can interface with my physical therapist more easily and seamlessly for the little stuff, and for the bigger, more complex stuff, or at a different point in that interaction, maybe that's when I need to go and be in the office. And so I think we have a lot of therapists and clinics now figuring that out. But I think we're going to continue to sort of dial in where's that balance and where's that point of service, and it may look different for different patient needs.
Yeah, and I agree, and I've been a big proponent for this, especially over the last 2 years. Is we have, I think it's by 2030, I think it's about a $3 trillion market for health and wellness that's been
Yep.
exploding, right? So how do we tap into that, right, as a profession? A lot of, like you said, prehab, people wanting to live longer, live healthier lives, more active adults, sports, different sports levels. So I think there's a huge opportunity for clinics if they are looking ahead to tap into, like you said, not just the post injury recoveries, but the prehab and preventative and wellness and health. And I think that's a direction that our profession is going. I'm seeing more of that happening within clinics. I think and we just know that the industry itself for health and wellness is substantially grown. So there's a big opportunity for clinics to take advantage of that too.
Oh yeah, huge. And we're not the only healthcare group with a projected shortage. I mean, for PT, we have a significantly projected shortage through 2037. Um, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be infusing in these other areas, right? It will drive demand, and also gives us opportunities to sort of think differently about how we get paid for our services. So I think capitalizing on that need and interest the population has around wellness and prevention and primary care, just coming straight to your PT as your first point of entry into the system is going to really grow exponentially as well.
Yeah. I interned in the Navy in Groton, Connecticut, and so that was a really unique experience because I was in the Navy. You pretty much are like a primary care PT.
Yeah.
Yeah, people would come see you first. You could prescribe certain medication. You could send people for X-rays, and then determine like, hey, does this person need to go see the orthopedic doc, or do they need to stay with me? It was a pretty cool experience there, and how PTs were primary care in that role.
Absolutely.
So we have obviously some big threats going on in the profession right now. We've got reimbursement challenges, we got workforce, we got positioning. I'm just curious, like what's kind of the big thing that's keeping you up at night, or on your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think I do lose some sleep over it sometimes, especially in this role. The reality is, it's not one or two things; it's the combination of the things that I think is the challenge. I think sometimes there's a perception that we should have done something to fix payment, or we should have done something to fix workforce. The reality is, APTA, when I say we, APTA is doing lots of things to address all of those issues, but the confluence of them is a real challenge right now. So we have graduates that are graduating with the highest debt burdens we've ever had in education, not just in physical therapy, which is another sort of misconception. This is across the board in education, not just physical therapy. So that contributes to an unfortunate debt burden to salary ratio, because in physical therapy, we all know our salaries are lower than other healthcare providers. Um, Payment and reimbursement is relatively lower than it's been, which then combined with the debt burden makes that feel much more raw to graduates and early professionals, or professionals that are paying those loans. And then that demand and supply issue means there's a whole lot of people coming in our doors that we want to help because that's what we do. But we don't always have the staff to do it. Does that drive up productivity expectations for everybody else, which makes those other things feel worse? Or does it mean we're not taking care of everybody in our community that we want or could be taken care of? So all of those things together is what keeps me up, and the complexity of addressing all of them simultaneously is sort of where we're focused. But it is complicated to sort of tease all those issues out, and they all influence each other. So I think that's sort of where my head stays a lot of the time.
Yeah, and like you said, I totally agree. When you start to really look at it, it is a very complex, interactive situation, right? And there's a lot of players here, from insurance companies to way regulations are done in government to, the buyer demand and what's happening at the local level, right? So I think for our audience out there, there's not one simple fix to all this, right? It takes a strategic plan, and we can't, there's certain things I believe that the APTA can influence from like a regulatory level and be an advocate for us on Capitol Hill and also at the local levels and state levels. But there's a lot that also comes back to individuals, right? And like practice owners, especially, and how can we, leverage our interactions with insurance companies at our state levels. How can we interact with even our customers, right, and their demands, and how we interact with each other? So there's a lot of approaches here that we need to take to do these things. But like you said, they're so interwoven. Like, here's just one thing that I was just hearing the other day was that my daughter goes to University of Tampa, and she's in allied health, and so there's different directions that you can go within that allied health base. One, you can be an athletic trainer, you can go into PT, you can become an OT, you can go to physician assistant, you can go into nursing even. And so as the future professionals start to look at what career do they want to develop into, they're also looking, because of that, college debt burden. Okay, well, do I go and become a DPT and PT and come out making 80,000-90,000 a year, or do I spend the same amount of time and become a physician assistant or a nurse anesthetist and make $150,000 or $180,000 a year, right? So I think we're the positioning down the road is going to be even more challenging if we don't get these reimbursement challenges handled, relatively soon, because that next generation of PTs is making the choices now of where they want to go and what professions that they want to do, for themselves.
The top 10% of PT owners aren't just surviving, they're thriving. But what's their secret? Well, Neil Trickett's new Market to Grow book reveals how the top 10% of PT practices leverage marketing systems to simultaneously grow their new patients, attract top talent, and boost profit in their practice. You can learn from their secrets. Visit practicepromotions.net/book to claim your free copy of Market to Grow. Yes, you heard that right. We are shipping a free copy of Market to Grow to all podcast listeners who want it. Just visit practicepromotions.net/book to claim your free book. And now back to the show.
Yeah, and I also think, to add to the complexity, right? The U.S. economy and real estate market are vastly different than they were when I graduated PT school. So owning a home looks different than it used to look. So that's all contributing. And where can APTA impact change is not in all those areas. We can't change the cost of tuition for universities. We can't change the real estate market. What we can do is really fight for payment. We can equip people to manage those pressures as a professional differently. But that's where we're focused is sort of in that space and in that advocacy and also recognizing too that we talk about payment and reimbursement, which is really important. We also have to talk about salary. And I think sometimes people think, well, if we increase reimbursement, then salaries are going to go up too. And that may or may not be the case. So we have to address what should we be reimbursed and what should we be paid? Because just because your health system gets better reimbursement, is it going to be passed along to the physical therapist in their paycheck is something we also have to talk a lot about.
Yeah, totally. And I did a little podcast on this not too long back where I went back and I looked at the Medicare fee schedule in Florida back when I had my, beginning of my practice, like in 2002. And, reimbursement for me for like 4 units with a patient was roughly $100 at that time. And salaries for PT were around 50,000 at that time, right? So, fast forward in today's dollars, that's more like 180,000. Right. $180 per hour, with the patient. Yet the salary range has bumped up to maybe like, 80 to 100, depending on where you are. Right. So absolutely right. I mean, I think what I see too is that a lot of the practice owners that we chat with, like they want to pay more, but they're really constrained. And so I have seen the ones that, again, bring these cash line services in, they're able to get their revenue per visit up higher to offset, that salary increase cost, and they can be more competitive for therapists in their market because they have, they're making a little bit more per patient because of these different programs that they're putting in their clinic. So, I'm a big advocate for that too. Like, what can you bring into your practice that you can offer more to the public that they want, and obviously, you don't have to deal with a lot of the insurance billing headaches and things from that perspective, and you can increase your dollar rate per visit, which then gives you some more wiggle room to operate the business, to pay the staff better, to be competitive in salaries. So for me, I'm seeing a lot of that change happening in the market.
Yeah, and I think that change is exciting, not scary, right?
No,
I think sometimes
it's wonderful.
It's wonderful. I think we have to be honest as a profession and recognize that growth and change benefits us. And it's not a threat to us to see people working out of network or having cash-based lines. There's going to always be a need for physical therapy services that are in network and insurance facing. But there's a diversified need for other ways of practice and reimbursement as well.
Absolutely. I love that. And so, just kind of curious from your perspective, how do you see that future of private practice PT ownership and entrepreneurship? And so just kind of curious if APTA has a role or continue to support private practice ownership instead of, corporate consolidation that's happening a lot in the marketplace.
Yeah, I mean, I think, let me give my caveat. I've never worked in a private practice. I've never owned a private practice. I've been a health system employee my whole career in university health systems. So I haven't firsthand experienced that as an owner. I did grow up in a family business in agriculture, so I get the pressures that people are under in ownership in a very real way. But yeah, it has a huge role to play in that. And we're fortunate in our structure that I talked about at the beginning that we have APTA Private Practice as one of our 18 specialty sections and academies. So they're leading the way and partnering with sort of the APTA national umbrella in the issues that are specific to practice ownership. I think it's a lot of the things we've already been talking about, Neil. Like, right, it's like finding different ways to diversify your offerings. It's figuring out that balance between productivity and burnout. It's figuring out like how can we make sure money's coming in different ways. And I think it's also it's having hard conversations with payers about what they're offering us. I haven't been in this situation, but I imagine it is terrifying to turn down an insurance company that's paying. But if they're not paying at the rate that's sustainable for you to do business, do you negotiate and navigate that? APTA Private Practice has some pretty good data on that. There's been a turning point in practice owners who negotiate their rates up. So I think just having those conversations and navigating those, it wears us down and it's tiresome, and we don't feel like we need to be asking. But we're seeing people get better payment if they negotiate.
Yeah.
So I don't think we have to take it, is my point.
Absolutely.
I think we can navigate and negotiate those conversations and get better what we deserve. And sometimes that might mean walking away, but then we have to have another revenue stream to slot into that. And that's why I think that conversation around, is it a cash-based stream, an out-of-network stream, or some other program that we are well suited as physical therapists to do because of our training and our background, but then augment sort of that revenue is really important. So I think probably gone are the days of being just a one-trick pony kind of clinic. I think we have to be innovative and diverse in what we do, and that's private practices, that's health systems, that's acute care. Like it's everywhere. It just hits private practice a little bit differently, I think.
Yeah, and a lot of times they don't necessarily have the bandwidth
Right.
to work those negotiations, those contracts, and you're completely right. Like you have to be an advocate for that, and it should be something part routine of your business where you are renegotiating your insurance contracts. We did that a lot in our practice, and I remember starting off with United Healthcare paid us $35 a treatment. And I was like, we can't even support ourselves for that. But my wife, who's a PT, she was like, hey, you know what? Let's just get it in. We'll treat a couple patients a month that we can take from this. And then we advocated. We kept renegotiating. We got up to the point where we were the highest paid clinic pretty much in a couple counties for United Healthcare in South Florida. At that time, we got up to $85 a visit, which was fantastic for United Healthcare. But it just showed that you had to work at it. You had to work at that renegotiating. And again, I think what you're saying there is 100% true, that you have to be willing to walk away. Right. And this is where marketing really comes into place. If your clinic is marketed well and positioned well, where you can attract a lot of different patients, you can pick and choose. Right. You can pick and choose what insurances that you do want to take that do fit your basic dollar per hour for operating basis, and then what your profitability needs to be for that. So 100% agree on that.
And I think where we are challenged as a profession, Neil, is none of us are trained to do that, right? We're trained to be PT experts. We're not trained to be marketers. We're not trained to be negotiators. We're not trained to be, for many of us, business owners. So we that's why it feels hard, I think, is we don't have that skill set inherently, and it wasn't part of our training. So we have to seek that out, right? Through those networks, through those mentorships, through those that have done it before, through things like, your services, APTA Private Practice. How do I learn to become a better negotiator? I don't know how to do that. So, but there are resources out there for folks that will help them in these things.
Absolutely. And I would encourage anybody here who has not joined the private practice section and you're a practice owner, like you should definitely be part of that. They have incredible resources. And I've been really happy, like I'd say over the last, especially 5 years, I've seen such an uptick in the amount of resources available to help you with business, to help you with insurance negotiations, peer-to-peer networks. Like this has been a huge impact I've seen from the PPS. And I'm really happy with that. And so I'm heavy advocate. I would love more practice owners to definitely be part of that. There's a ton of resources for you in there.
And they're also doing a lot of work and have a lot of great resources in sort of that direct to employer model, which I think is new or growing for us. Like, how can you as a business owner go to the employers in your area and say, like, pay me, send all your people to me instead of paying an overhead to an insurance company. And so I think that's another example of like, how can you diversify your who's coming in your door in a different way. And so I think thinking differently about that's going to be what we need over the next 10 years, and also what's going to make us successful.
Absolutely. And so, if we look over that next decade, or for outpatient PT especially, how do we need to change the way that we market, the way that we communicate our value to patients and payers to command that higher reimbursement that we want?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think we stumble to tell our story effectively, and I think some of that's just inherent in the fact that our what we do is diffuse and complex, right? I mean, we treat birth to death. We treat like every type of practice pattern in an ortho neuro, all the different things. There's still so much that the average citizen doesn't know they can come to a PT for. It's
Mhm.
been a constant struggle over our first 100 years. We got to get a handle on telling our story differently and 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 better and more succinctly. It's hard to tell a succinct story when you do so much. So how can we do that? But I do think society is changing too. They're seeing that there's more options for their health than to just go to their physician.
Mhm.
So we got to capitalize on that, right? We have to capitalize on healthy aging. We have to capitalize on the unhealthy youth that we have an epidemic with right now too. We're the answer to all of those ends of that spectrum, and so we got to tell that story differently. And I also think the best thing we can do is advocate to the patient in front of us. It's real easy in a busy day to, here comes my next patient. We're going to do what we're going to do. I'm going to give them the exercises. I'm going to send them on their way. But taking that extra time to really explain to that person the complexity of what we're doing, the why behind what we're doing, and the how they can tell their community, and they're our best advocates, are the people that you're seeing in your clinic. One thing I think cash-based PTs have had to learn to do and are really effective at it is selling the value of their service. They have to. Like if I'm going to shell out cash, I got to understand why it's worth paying that. Those of us that work in an insurance or in network model, quite honestly, don't have to do that with the same level of effectiveness. And I wish that if 100% of PTs explained and sold, for lack of a better term, what we do to the patient in front of us, um, everybody in their circles would be coming to us in droves, right? The best referrals are the ones that come from your current patients, but sometimes that's on us to really explain what that value is. And if it's not coming out of their pocket, they don't maybe know what the value is in the same way. So I think we can do a lot of work there with the hundreds of thousands of people we see collectively every day to help them understand what that value is. Then they understand it and know why to come back. They know why to stick with us through their course of rehab. And they tell all their friends and family, like, hey, this was worth it. And this is why it was worth it. And my PT helped me understand why it was worth it. And I think that could be a big game changer for us.
I love that because it's something that everybody can work on, right?
Yeah.
And we have a fortunate opportunity really in the healthcare spectrum that we're one of the professions that get to spend a lot of time with
Yeah.
patients, right, over a long period of time, whereas they might go and see the doctor for 10 minutes if they're lucky, right? But we get to see the patient for an hour, sometimes over the course of 10 or 14 or more treatments, right? And so I think we're in a very unique place where we build an excellent relationship, but you're completely right in that often we don't take the time to educate broadly the patient on what we do, right? And that's a great opportunity marketing wise to say, hey, there's so many times when you're treating a patient and you're working on their knee and someone else is working on another person's neck, and they're like, oh, I didn't know you treated necks. My husband has a neck problem. Well, bring him on in, right? Because
Yeah.
the public is unaware of all the things that we can, help with. So yeah, I think
I
that's
also
a
think,
fantastic thing is
no, I,
of that. I love it.
sorry, I get excited about it. I also think spending that extra 30 seconds to empower your patient to be an advocate is huge too, right?
Mhm.
It's easy for me to be like, yeah, you only have 10 visits with Blue Cross Blue Shield or Aetna or whatever, like fill in the blank. I didn't mean to single out Blue Cross Blue Shield. There's challenges with all insurance companies
Yeah.
and PT services. I said Blue Cross Blue Shield because I broke my ankle last year and my visits were limited for PT, so it was an interesting dynamic. But if your patient's upset about it, help them have the number to call. Like that's more work on us for sure.
Yeah.
But insurance companies are not going to, they're going to change when their consumer is upset.
Mhm.
Legislators are going to change when their constituents are upset. It's a stronger argument for a patient to go in to their member of Congress and say, here's why I need these services than it is for me to go in and say, here's why you should make sure that I get these opportunities. And so it's easy to we're like you said, we're with these patients for a while,
Yeah.
and during the treatments and in those conversations and in those moments where we're trying to find small talk, let the small talk be about how they can be our advocates.
Love that. Love that. And yeah, I was agreeing with you too when we talk about salesmanship, right? And sales is natural. It's normal. We're selling every single day. Like sell my wife on going to see a movie. So we got to get better at that, right? And so here's a joke that I always tell back when I had my practice. Like if you approach somebody on the street and you ask them what is have they heard of physical therapy, they'll say yes. If you ask them what a physical therapist does, they won't give you the answer you think that they're going to give you, right? They usually don't have an understanding. If you ask them, have they heard of chiropractic? They would say yes. And they say, what does a chiropractor do? Oh, well, they treat backs, right? So there's a different public perception there. And I think the chiropractic profession, what they did many, many decades ago was that they because they were less insurance model, like they had to sell their services. They get that training in school even. And so I think we're at a position now in our practice in our profession where we have to get better. We have to get better at marketing and selling what we deliver for people. And if your patient, drops off after a couple of visits of care, well, that's on you because you didn't sell them on the outcome that they should have received from your services, right? So I think we have to get better overall in ourselves as a profession of selling our services, and that again, that can come from like the on an individual basis.
And right, and I think payment's going to improve when that demand
Yeah,
from society takes off,
takes
and
off.
it's taking off now. I mean,
Yeah,
for
I
all the
see it.
challenges that we've talked about, we are seeing some shifts and
Uh-huh.
inflections in the moment. Medicare reimbursement went up for the first time. We had huge wins with huge payers last year around decreasing burden and increasing reimbursement. We had wins in multiple states around better practice access and expanding scope. We had multiple states with double digit reimbursement increases in Medicaid services. So there is this snowball happening. We just gotta like all get together and push the snowball
Yeah,
further down the hill faster. So
100%, 100%. Just kind of switching gears here a little bit. Reimbursement. We talked about that. Let's talk a little bit about staffing here and this kind of shortfall that we have. Obviously, we're in a good position. We have a lot of opportunity ahead for growth of the profession, but it's keeping up with the demand for the people to actually deliver the services. So just kind of curious from the APTA standpoint, like what are we looking for here to help improve staffing and the next generation of therapists coming up?
yeah, I mean, I'm not going to tell any business owner something they don't already know, but I think the first step is retention. And so it's easier to keep the people we have than to get new folks, and it's also expensive, right? When you like, I don't know, in some I've talked to some business owners and health system managers. It's $100,000 cost to replace a staff person. So how do we retain? And that's a complicated balance of supporting. Mentoring, providing your employees those opportunities. APTA can help do that a lot, and APTA private practice through the resources that we have as well as how do you put somebody on a supportive clinical pathway to grow their expertise and become a better clinician. How do we help them counteract the burnout that's real and is out there through resources? How do we help them manage their debt burden so that they can stay with you and in their practice versus having to seek something that they may not be as passionate about, but may pay them more. So all of those things are things we're doing on our front. But I think that practice owners have to think through that complexity. It's another complex thing and so many different multi-factorial things going on there. And then I think it's sort of what's the educational system doing to increase capacity without increasing cost, and that's a challenge. It's a market thing too, right? Like how how do we get more people into the profession through school and into clinics in an efficient but very effective way, because we also can't trade um, speed and volume for quality when it comes to training. And so, APTA is looking at things like, are there models where we could speed up DPT to DPT to residency training and get that clinical expertise training, faster and decrease debt burden. But we also we're also looking at the retention side of things as well, not for an individual clinic level, but for the profession as a whole. How do we make sure people can stay in this profession?
Yeah, that's something that I've heard of too, where you have someone that went to school, became a PT, they're in the profession maybe 3 years, and then they're actually going on to a different career. So I think that's also like a responsibility of the if they're in private practice, like the responsibility of developing, mentor, and continue to move people forward in their growth in the profession. I think that's something on us as practice owners to be looking at, is like, how are we empowering our team that works for long-term retention in your clinic, but also in the profession as a whole, because that person can see themselves developing within their own profession, right? Um,
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious. Has the APT ever considered like a tiered degree? Like when I got my bachelor's of physical therapy back in 1998, right? And then I was the first class that they actually was starting the master's program, and then became the master's. And then the 2020 vision came out. We went to a DPT, program there. Is it something where we keep a DPT, but maybe there's also a master's? We bring back the master's. I don't know if that's something that is a possibility. Just thinking of like moving people through the system a little bit faster for more output.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. There's obviously a lot of opinions about what degree we should have there. There still are.
Hmm.
Um, I can say with certainty that the move to the DPT has helped us in payment, regulatory, scope expansion, like all of those advocacy battles. We've been able to say we're trained at this level consistently across the profession. Every single provider is. So we also have to balance like what helps us advance and win those advocacy battles versus what helps us meet the demand. And that's also complex. Complex is the word of the podcast, right? That's also complex. I think there's ways to sort of be in the sweet spot of both. And it's a combination of the education system, the sort of advocacy arm of things, to figure out sort of where that sweet spot is.
Yeah. I think too, like you said, everything's interwoven there. Reimbursement, honestly, if we were at a point where a PT salary was averaging, let's say, like what a physician assistant was in, like, say, or even pharmacy or whatever like that. Like, say they were in that like the 120 to 140 range, that would be significant. People wanted to do more or become more PTs, right? That would help with the applicants into school, things like that. So we can see how reimbursement affects the attraction into the profession, right? And then retention wise, it also affects that. So, yeah. So I think again, there's different things that we can attack from different ways. We know that it's going to be very competitive, obviously, for the future in terms of staffing. But that's where, again, as a practice, as a business, being able to attract top people to you, and retain those people through programs and delivering great care and great service, doing the right things, it's going to be a more competitive environment for it.
Yeah.
So just kind of wrapping up here, Kyle, I'm curious, is there any suggestions for our audience out there, what they can do to further support the APTA, the future of the profession, like becoming a member, for example, things that they can get involved in?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think with all these complex issues that we've talked about today, the thing we need to help move the needle is more engagement and more involvement. We need people at the table to tell the stories of how payment is impacting their practice and their livelihood and their access for patients to receive their services, right? We need we need those folks involved in sort of the clinical advancement, development of clinical practice guidelines, like all of those types of things that APTA is also doing. Um, so the easiest way to get involved in APTA is first be a member. But don't just be a passive member, be an engaged and an active member. The easiest way to do that to start out is tap on the shoulder of folks you know that are involved and help them help you find those networks in those areas where you can find your people. But also APTA has what's called APTA Engage. So if you are a member, you have to opt in to APTA Engage. It doesn't happen automatically, but it's sort of where all of the volunteer and involvement opportunities are there in a repository, and you can sort of search by geography, search by interest area. You can get opportunities pushed to your inbox that are, maybe I only have time for small little bursts of something. I don't have time to be the state president or the APTA board member. So how do you engage in a way that matches what your needs are, what your time allotment is, what stage of life you're in? And so that's the easiest and best way to find those opportunities.
Love it. Thank you so much, Kyle. And for our audience out there, definitely get involved in the APTA, get involved in your local chapters out there, get involved in the private practice section. Tons of resources to help you, but you can also give back and move the profession forward. So, Kyle, thank you so much for all that you do. Thank you to all the members of the APTA for what you do. And it's been a pleasure having you here on the podcast.
Thanks a lot.
Awesome. And so to all our listeners out there, thank you so much. Hope you got a lot out of today's podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Practice Marketing Podcast, and also check out our YouTube channel where we have all these interviews on there too. And don't forget to check out practicepromotions.net where you can get tons of marketing advice for your practice. So this is Neil from the Practice Marketing Podcast, wishing you much success in your practice.
A free way for you to support our show is by leaving a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It's a chance for you to tell us what you love about the show, and it helps others discover it as well. Just scroll down to ratings and review on your phone and click write a review. Thanks.